Okay, so in today's video we'll look at TacAcs and Radius. Both are used for authentication, centralized authentication system when you have multiple network devices and you want to centralize user authentication. And we have basically two protocols, um, TacAcs and the Radius. So these are the main differences between TacAcs and Radius. So TacAcs can do authentication, authorization, and accounting. These are separate functionalities, and Radius on the other hand just does the authentication uh, and the authorization but separate the accounting. And talking about the encryption, TACAC's entire packet is encrypted, and whereas Radius server, it only encrypts the password field, and username and everything else is encrypted plain text. And on layer 4, TACACS uses TCP port number 49, and Radius uses a UDP protocol for all of its communication, and it uses different UDP ports for authentication, authorization, and accounting, as you can see here. TACACS provide more granular control. It can authorize certain command. For example, Bob can execute shut and no shut interface command, and Alice cannot do that. So we can have each user with different authorization level. Radius doesn't provide that level of functionality. Okay, so let's move on to lab now. Okay, so this is our topology for today, and we'll be configuring AAA authentication services on the router R1. And here I have my AAA server. I have all pre-configured this server with my username and password and authentication key for the AAA services. We'll see that later in the video. And this server one is just a client that we'll be using to SSH into the R1 router. So let's get started. So the first command is AAA new model, and then let me configure the TACACS server first, 10.003. So I'll say TACACS and then space server, and then we name it TAC GUI, or you can just name it anything. I'm just gonna name it in capital so I know it's user defined versus Cisco syntax. And question mark, hit enter. Now you go to the TACACS server configuration mode, and I will say address IPv4, which is 10.003 here. So I'll say 10.003, and the key is what you will have specified on the server side. So it should match what you have in here. So my key is Cisco 123. So I'm just gonna say Cisco 123. I think my server config fails. Okay. C do show run. Okay. So I already had TACACS server pre-configured on this one. I was just showing you for the video purposes, so I'm just gonna remove this. Okay, and do the no command and do show run again. Okay, now we have a TACACS server tag GUI. Let's complete the configuration here. So tag GUI. Okay, now we already configured the key, and now I'll say address IPv4 is 10.003, which is this server right here. Okay, now if I do show run, you can see that I defined the name tag GUI and gave it IP address and the key, which is pre-configured on the server side already. So now let's just do AAA new model config. So AAA group, I think it's TacAcs server group, and I'm telling that I am configuring server group because you can have multiple TACACS server under this group, and we will be using this group for the authentication, authorization, and accounting purposes. And now I'm choosing the TACACS group, so because I'm using TACACS protocol here, this is TACACS server. If I had ICE, maybe I could do the Radius, or maybe another some open source servers which could do the Radius server functions. So okay, let's Now let's just give it a name. I'll say T AAA group. Okay, and then now we have entered into the group configuration. Now you have to define which servers do you want to add into the group. So I'll say server name, and here you can see we already created a server. So tag GUI is the name. We'll be using the definition. Okay, hit enter. Now one thing to note down is if I was running any VRF here, I could do IP VRF forwarding to resolve those issues. So it becomes in the same VRF. The TacAcs uses the same VRF, but for the lab purposes, I'm not in any VRF. So if you are having problem using authentication, you might want to look into this as well if there is any VRF configured on your device. So now we just hit exit. Now I want to enable the authentication. So I'll say AAA authentication. Um, for the login, we want to enable AAA authentication for the login, and here is the password list. You can create your own password list. For example, you can use a different password list for console and have a different password list for the VTY lines, but for now I'm just going to use the default. But in your real environment you will use maybe different password list. So the default list will apply to everything: console access and VTY access, etc. So I'm gonna stick to the default for now, and I'll say I want to use group, use the server group, and we already defined TacAcs group above. So this will use all the TacAcs hosts that you have configured on your device, but we already configured this word server group name, which was AAA GRP. Maybe I can show you here. You can see this was the group we configured, and we're using this. And then we also want to enable the local authentication. Use the local username and password, and this will be if your router is not able to communicate to your TACAC server, then you don't want to be locked out. You still want to log in. So I'll say local, hit enter, and that should be it. Let's exit out from here. Let's also create the local username and password. So local username will be, let's just say Cisco, and password will be 123, just for the testing again. You don't want to have weak passwords in your production environment. So now that's configured. Line VTY 024, transport input SSH. So I'm enabling SSH. I already have SSH keys generated, and yeah, that should be it. So now I'm just gonna do debug TACAcs uh, packets. Okay, let's just do debug, and let's go to the server one now, and I'm gonna do SSH. I have to use this because the SSH doesn't use SHA-256 on the router. I haven't configured that, just for the video. And here my username is and the IP address of the server. So click enter. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, which is pre-configured on the TACAC server. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, let me try 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, so now I'm logged into the server. Now one thing to note down, I'm directly logging into the user privilege mode, and that's because I pre-configured. You can see the debug here. Okay, so it's talking to the server, exchanging the packets. You see that the login happened through the TACAC server. So I'm just gonna do oh, okay, turn off the debugging, show run, include authorization. So this was the command, this was the reason why I directly landed into the privilege mode. And no if I do no this command, oops, no AAA authorization command. Okay, and if I exit and log in again, okay, now it says error in authentication. So what this command does is, I'm just gonna enable it. So this command does is authorize execute level privilege 15 using default password list if user is using AAA group. Okay, or what you could do is I could disable this and go to, let me show you it's disabled. So if I exit it, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, okay, I'm not able to log in. What I could do is I could also go to line VTY 0 to 4 and then give it privilege level 15. So what it does is anyone who uses VTY lines SSH telnet, they will already have level 15. So that's the alternative. Now you want to do whatever suits your requirement according to your organization. And here, see, no, let me exit it, do the session again. Okay, so see, now I didn't receive error in authentication. Now for the lab purposes, you can use free software. It's called TacGUI. It's a free of cost. I can show you how I have it configured. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay. So 123 is the password, and let's try 1 2 3 4 5 6. Doesn't work. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay. So you can see I have already configured R1 device. Its IP address is there, and if I go to user, I have this user configured here already. So this is what we've been using in the lab. I hope this video was informative, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.